Okay, we're getting more people to join, so we're just going to go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone. My name is Rich Clybourne. I'm the Executive Director of the Gundalow Company. I want to welcome you all to the next installment in our virtual Gundalow gatherings. This evening, we're going to see a video about a Viking voyage. The video is almost an hour long, so I'm going to keep my remarks short so we can jump right into this, into the video itself. Couple of housekeeping items before we get going here. Once again, you'll notice that your microphones have been muted, and that's going to remain the same throughout the presentation. When we get to the Q&A session, I'm going to unmute people so they can ask questions directly to our speaker. If you'd like to ask a question, please type it into the chat box, which is at the bottom of your screen. Just click on the chat icon and you can type in your question. If you don't want to type in the question, you just want to ask one, simply say that. Say, I'd like to ask a question. So we get to the Q&A session and I get the questions queued up. I'll be able to see that and then I'll be able to unmute you and you can ask your question directly to the speaker. See, we are going to record tonight's presentation, and I'm not sure if we're going to be able to have it available for viewing in the future, but we are going to record it just in case we can. And then if you're having any computer issues, you can send an email to info@gundalow.org or call the office number, which is 603-433-9505. The calls are being forwarded to a staff member who will attempt to help you resolve those issues. All right, it's wonderful to see everybody out there. There's a lot of familiar faces, folks that have been with us for all 6 of these presentations and a bunch of new faces, which is even better. Glad to see that you're here and glad that you're with us. So let me go ahead and introduce the speaker and then we'll jump into the video. Our speaker this evening, or actually our presenter this evening, is Dean Plager. In 1975, Dean took a teaching job at UNH so he could sail on the ocean. For 2 years, he sailed with a friend on Great Bay in a 19-foot O'Day. His first sailboat was a Pearson 26 that he sailed along the coast of Maine for 10 years. And then after shopping for a blue water boat for a couple of years, in 1989, he blew his savings on the Shannon 38 Ketch. He had her named Viking Rose before he even owned her. In 1995, he made a major change in his career so he could pursue blue water sailing. With 3 other experienced sailors, he sailed to Bermuda and back in June of that year as a shakedown cruise. In August, with 2 other friends, he sailed to the Azores. There, his crew was reduced to 1, and he sailed to Madeira and the Canary Islands. In November, he sailed single-handed from Tenerife to St. Lucia, and that passage took 28 days. In the spring of 1996, he cruised north through the Caribbean and then sailed solo from the U.S. Virgin Islands to Bermuda, where he added a crew member from the Azores leg before heading back to Portsmouth. During that year, he covered 5,000 miles and spent approximately 100 days offshore. Southbound 2 gave him a weather briefing every evening via his HFSSB. In June 1997, he was selected as a crew member on the replica Viking ship Snorri, which is what the video is about this evening. She was built in Maine specifically to retrace Leif Erikson's route from Greenland to Newfoundland around the year 1000 AD. She's an open boat without auxiliary power, and during the first summer, they accomplished only a small part of their planned voyage. However, they returned the next summer and successfully completed the voyage. This involved sailing from the Arctic Circle across the Davis Strait to Baffin Island and down the coast of Labrador to l'Anse aux Meadows on the northern tip of Newfoundland. This was done without an escort vessel. Snorri is now on display in a museum at l'Anse aux Meadows. As a result of this experience in 1999, he was invited to crew on the Borgen Naren, which belongs to a museum in Ålesund, Norway. She is also a replica of the Nar Skudelev 1. She was chartered by the BBC to do a documentary on Viking navigation, and he sailed from Bergen to the Shetland Islands about 180 miles using only a Viking sun compass. The navigator on that trip was Sir Robin Knox Johnston. Since then, he has sailed to Newfoundland twice again with friends in their J46. He was also able to crew on another sailboat back up the coast of Labrador, along the southern coast of Baffin Island, and back along part of the northern coast of Quebec to Ungava Bay. So with that, I know that Dean wants to point out a couple of things about the video before we get started. So I'm going to unmute Dean and let him tell you about those things. Go ahead, Dean. Welcome.
Good evening, everybody.
Dean, can you hear me?
It's great to see a nice turnout.
There you go.
There's two things that I'd like you to look for in the movie. One is fairly early on, while the boat's trying to tack out of a fjord, you can get some idea of how much leeway she makes if you pay attention to the video. The boat actually points pretty high, but it doesn't track very high. And the other one is the boat had an interesting curvature under the hull called, I believe they called it a megahuffin. But this indenture into the hull created a vortex that went out the stern. And there are two times, I believe, in this video where you can see this vortex leaving the stern of the boat, and it goes out probably at least the length of the boat, at least 40 feet, and it's kind of cool. And I'll answer all the other stuff at the end of the video.
All right, thanks, Dean. Also, folks, I just want to give you a heads up that there is some salty language in the video and a few bare bums. So I'm just letting everyone know that you're going to encounter that as you watch the video. So with that, I'll go ahead and share my screen and the video. So just please bear with me for a minute.
No matter how we traveled there otherwise, we never would have seen it the way we did. You know, so slowly and so completely. That's what was so cool about this project, was that we didn't have a motor on the boat, so we couldn't just head out, you know, when there was no wind, and then when there was too much wind.
The plan to retrace the route that Leif Erikson followed 1,000 years ago on the first Viking voyages of discovery. From Eric the Red's farm in southern Greenland, up the coast as far as the Arctic Circle, across the Davis Strait to Baffin in Canada, and then all the way down the Labrador coast to Lanceau Meadows in Newfoundland, the only confirmed Viking site in North America. All this aboard Snorri, named after the first child born to the Vikings in North America. An authentic replica Viking ship, or Knar, 54 feet long, square-rigged sail, oars, no motor, no cabin. Viking Voyage 1000 grew out of the imagination of a writer from Mississippi.
Those are my first two nautical terms I learned to learn. So now I have to pretend like everyone else I know.
Harding Carter convinced a large clothing retailer to sponsor the entire project.
No real sailor would have ever dreamed this trip up. It had to be somebody like Harding. It's too nuts.
We really hope to be sailing, how many days ago was that now? 8 days ago. And every day we said, oh, we'll sail today. And it still hasn't happened.
Yep.
Got
Dean Plager was the last of the 12 crew members to be chosen.
When Harding called me and told me I was going to be on the crew, first thing I did was call Terry. And he says, great, now there's 3 sailors on the crew.
It was a struggle between feeling excited about it and thinking this is an incredible thing. This is an incredible adventure, you know, that we're about to start on. But the other half of that is thinking, like, we have no idea what we're doing. You know, we're starting at too low a basic skill level to be able to pull this thing off.
How new was the crew? I mean, it was completely new. They were new to sailing. They were new to each other. They were new. Some were new to the outdoors. They were new, as new as you can get.
And then practice.
That was what he was trying to do?
He was trying to do his slippery head.
He was pretty slippery.
It was the very first time I ever met Hotting. He had gone right down the line and told me how, this person's been sailing for so and such an amount of time, this person's been sailing this kind of boats and for this much time, and Hotting, that all sounds great, but what you admit that you don't know anything about boats. So what makes you qualified to pick a sailor? And he allowed us. That was a good point. We decided we just wait to see who showed up.
After getting to know Hotting, it didn't surprise me in the least to the quality of the crew he found.
So the daisy chain just goes through like this, is that right? Well, I want to keep doing the daisy chain. What do you think about this? What's the thing? You know, Homer?
No, I just was going to tie a slip knot.
Are there
two different size oars or more than two different size oars?
One size.
Okay, the commands are going to be for rowers. I'm just joking. Give way means go forward. And if you don't figure it out, I'll probably say go forward. Port side, give way. Well.
Like this?
And instead of pulling down, if you pull a blade out towards you, like even fall backwards on it, pull this way, and then your last motion is to slide down.
With Snorri finally ready to sail, we had time for a few days' worth of sea trials along the coast of Maine.
Dad, I'm impressed.
Come on.
I'll think about it.
Oh shit, he dove in? You're psycho.
He's in already. Man, I love this shit.
Come on. You got a headache, don't you? I didn't even feel that. If I swim, really got my toes turned white. And so still the blood hasn't come back. I guess I probably bored you guys about my Raynaud's already, huh? I have Raynaud's syndrome in my feet.
I'll have to hear it again.
And so I have no circulation down there?
Yeah.
My goal is to make this an adventure for all of us.
Ready? 2, 3.
Make it something that sort of has a lot to do with just like acting and on your imagination and having fun. And because of the dangers involved in this, and because of the fact that not very many people know how to sail canoe, I've had to make this more organized and more like an expedition than I would like. But the good thing is I threw in a pretty raw crew. So I think no matter what, it will be an adventure. There's the boat.
Yes!
Lori was shipped over to Greenland on a container ship. She arrived a couple of weeks late, and getting her ready to sail took more valuable time. We had 1,900 miles to travel, and at the most 8 weeks to do it in. We needed to make an average of 40 miles per day.
That one here is for my wife,
Yeah, I think we put it all.
and that one is for my friend.
Yeah,
The other two here is for my wife.
It's time to go. It's been time to go for a while.
it's the first time we've all been together on the boat as a group, all 12 of us. And there are some of us, just because of work schedules, during the month of May, that there are some of us that have not had the benefit of being on the boat very much. And we're on the boat now. We're in Greenland. We're on the boat. It's more or less ready to go. Right now, let's talk about if this boat sinks. Whenever the decision is made to abandon ship, hopefully it will have been made with enough time that we will have time to get into our immersion suits and prepare ourselves as best we can for whatever comes after that. Hopefully the boat won't sink turtles. Right. Taking the life raft with it.
Does it deploy underwater?
It doesn't inflate itself underwater, but it pops loose and floats to the surface. Okay.
I remember that day pretty well, actually. It was the day we first left from Bartleby, from Eric the Red's farm, trying to get going. And we'd row madly for a wind line and only to have it die. And then it would appear behind us and it would appear off to the side.
And then all of a sudden we rode into it and it kicked in. It was like the trip just began like that.
The backdrop for sailing a vessel like this, having some of the oldest granite on the face of the earth to either side of us and dodging huge masses of ice that have calved off the glaciers is just dramatic. I think it's fantastic.
And then we got on the other side of the ice field and the wind died, and we ended up rowing again.
Can't get any darker than this tonight.
We were all together as a crew that was going to be on the boat for the first time. And then it was so bloody frustrating. The wind was in the wrong direction. The benefit of that was we had to sail the boat all the time, tack back and forth, make almost no progress. But there was no sort of sitting back and just cruising. We were sailing all the time and practicing those maneuvers. And in pretty tight quarters. I mean, we were, starting tacks less than 100 yards from the sides of those fjords, which at the time I thought was pretty risky because the winds get less predictable when you get close there. And, we had no motor, no chase boat. It made me a little nervous.
To get to Narsak. It's about a little less than 30 miles. As much as it felt like an epic at times. Rowing last night for hours and hours and getting nowhere, but it was really the sail training days that we never got.
I think that's going to be the nature of the trip. It's going to be a mixture of
hard times where the winds aren't cooperating, and then we'll have times where we're sailing and things will be feeling a lot better.
And we probably tacked it, I don't know, 100 times yesterday, and it was exactly what we needed.
Do you think when we're out here we'll be able to tell which way the wind's blowing?
Not hard to imagine why they call it Cape Desolation. Yeah. This place looks like it was created by weather that isn't happening right now.
Anyway, this has like made my day. I mean, actually, this place is amazing. We've all been walking around just like shocked by it.
Everybody on the boat has all their clothes on and are huddled in sleeping bags. I think they're still cold. When the wind failed us, we could always just venture onto the shore for a hike, for a swim in a shallow pond, or just a little time apart from the rest of the crew.
I don't know. We started 9 days ago or 10 days ago, and we've made 50 miles. I guess average about 5 miles a day, something like that. But at the same time, we all sort of know that, you know, when we can, we'll make up some miles. So I figure that's what we'll do. And we're sort of getting ourselves set for going out into the ocean, because we haven't really been out there for like a half hour the other day. And if we're lucky, we'll get a nice wind coming from behind. If not, we'll be tacking and getting wet and sprayed.
Whoa! What about this little storm we got going?
It's not storm, it's only maybe a little gale.
Yep.
When we first started sailing, started doing sea trials, we discovered that the rudder basically didn't work. You know, we could turn the rudder is offset on one side, so it's an asymmetrical force being applied to the boat, and we could turn fine to one side, but we couldn't turn fine to the other side, to the point where we were having a hard time doing things like missing islands.
The very first rudder we had didn't steer the boat. Literally a piece of plywood, a flat piece of plywood, steered the boat better than the first rudder. We had another rudder designed for us that looked like a Viking rudder, but it really wasn't. And a lot of what made it work, same as the piece of plywood, was just the massive surface area. And the problem was that put a lot of strain on the boat. And the withy, you know, we had started with hemp rope. That broke immediately. We had gone to Roblon rope, which is a man-made fiber. That didn't last that long. And then we went to Combi line, which again, steel and polyester, and that really only had a couple 100 miles on it when that broke.
The rudder is a nice issue for me because it helped to bring like the past to us. The sense of putting this whole project in a context of the past and like solving things and figuring things out, you know, it really did that. The rudder did. So thank God for that horrible rudder.
Okay, I need a volunteer. Any volunteers?
I don't know, it's fun. It's fun to be in town like this, but it's so drastically different than where we've been for the past 2 weeks, where we've only been seeing like 1 or 2 people or no people. Now we're outside the city, the big city, and everyone's actually a little blasé here about our Viking ship.
I guess that's a no. Great, thank you.
Which is good for us, you know. We don't need to be the toast of the town all the time.
Now we're getting ready either to cross the Davis Strait here or further north. There's the advantages to doing it from here and from Sissimute. Sissimute, the advantage is a shorter crossing, much shorter crossing, but it also is quite a number of miles to the north, which we then have to make coming back down on the other side, and it is getting late, later than I expected to still be here.
So it's that balance, you know. Do we go with what we want to do, or do we go with what makes sense? I don't trust just to open it up and say, hey, what do you guys feel about this? Because I don't want it, you know, if I feel strongly about how it should come out, I don't want to risk having it come out the other way.
We talked on the side about it, and I knew we weren't going up north. Because he talked, but he had this need in a way to include everybody in the crew, and he was great about it.
This just brings back all the memories of all this sort of like tension and subterfuge and not quite full, I think, honesty in front of everyone.
We know what it looks like now to be offshore in this boat. Are you willing to do that for that extra, 1,000 miles?
Right.
Can I add one?
I mean, I know I'm sounding like I'm being, like I've already made my decision, and in a way, I'm definitely leaning towards getting on with this. When we went around the circle and everybody was so willing to disregard, what was so plain to me.
I personally would like to try and do what we set out to do.
It made me feel like, what? You guys don't know shit. Well, let's make this boat ready to go to sea, and we'll get back to you.
How do you feel now, an hour later, about the fact that we're leaving?
I'm glad now.
Yeah.
So just because we know what to do, so.
I like the idea that what we're responding to is, I think the way sailors do respond is you respond to the conditions rather than to your own wishes.
Look how far that is.
No shit. I'm also, it makes me a little bit nervous because I feel we're still really shaking the boat down, that the boat still hasn't been tested.
Yep, no, Spanish. Way up north, Merrimack County. That's found. I was younger in my school. Watched the night turn, bitter storm, distant sang about tomorrow. I did wish I was grown.
Once we squeeze through this slot between the iceberg and the island, we're going to bring the sail down and kaye on the way down. Okay?
On board, Harmony.
Get up! Spin them around!
sailing this boat for the last couple of weeks, I've really come to respect it. And one of the things that is really nice is that it doesn't go very deep into the water.
5 fathoms.
And so that we can tuck up into little teeny tiny hidey holes like this. I mean, it's a 54-foot boat, and we're protected almost all the way around. And you know, this kind of spot right here would strike fear into the hearts of anybody whose boat, like most modern sailboats, who go way down into the water. And we have the luxury of spots like this all up and down the coast.
Ooh, tasty out of that, huh? Great.
Terry.
Yeah.
Tell us a little about what's going on right now, deep in the cave here.
Well, this morning we got a message from Lisa Mullen that included a message that Dr. G. Bigelow had written to us, some archaeologist who has spent many years studying, I guess his specialty is Norse archaeology. And he'd spent many years in Greenland and the Faroes and Iceland and everywhere else that's cold and wet and dank. And he, I guess, has been reading our website and has known about the project from the very beginning since he lives in Maine. And he's now, knowing that we intend to cross Davis Strait from Nuuk, he's very concerned, and he's demanding that Land's End supply us with a chase boat, whether we want one or not. I think is sort of the gist. And I'm responding to him. I'm writing him an email, and I'm telling him that I'm very grateful for his concern, but that he shouldn't even think he knows anything about what is actually going on out here.
Anchor up and down.
It occurred to me as we were sailing out of there that the reason why Vikings never evolved a sailboat that could sail upwind is because to sail upwind in these latitudes is to freeze to death.
Late afternoon, the rudder withy pulled the framing loose in the stern, and at midnight that night, when we changed watches, right after changing watches, the withy broke. Literally, the man-made polyester and steel cable snapped, and the rudder floated out sideways. The rudder's on the side of the ship. The rudder floated out straight out sideways. The only other place it's attached is at the top plank, the shear plank, and that just folded the shear plank right over. While wrestling the rudder on board, we snapped the tiller off.
I don't know if there's enough to see me by, but we just had the rudder break, and one of the frames, and so there's lots that's up in the air right now.
The structural area around the rudder really went haywire last night and broke in a couple of places. This was like the moment, in which we started testing the boat and testing ourselves, and doing things the way the Vikings did everything. And I don't know if we've passed that test.
The Canadian Coast Guard arrived in a large icebreaker, picked us up, and towed Snorri back to Greenland.
It does bother me a little bit now that those people out there that were doubters, that said we were fools, we've now given them fuel for their fires. They can now say, see, you were fools.
I was more uneasy the night before, when everything was going fine. We just were slamming into seas, and I'm sleeping on the barrels, and I can just hear the boat when it hits one of those. I mean, it's like a drum. It just sort of booms. And I was sort of paying attention to that tone of this drum and just listening to it and hoping that it was going to keep, ringing clear.
We did some offshore sailing, we did some inshore sailing, we beat our brains out, we jibed, we rode in fog, we rode with no charts. We did a little bit of everything, and it gave me a lot of confidence to the point where I was perfectly fine saying, yeah, we can cross Davis Strait.
I don't know what the headline is. Can't think of anything else to ask you.
That's it.
Bye-bye, Doug.
Over and out.
See you next
See you next summer. The next year we returned to Nuuk in the middle of June. Before Snorri could go back in the water, Rob and the crew had to repair the damage from the year before and add new structural pieces to make her stronger. We gave every piece of line and every inch of woodwork another protective coat of pine tar. Down at Nuuk's old harbor, we took part in some friendly competition with the locals.
Look at them go all the way down. Look at that.
Doing everything we could to get ready for the months ahead.
No.
Instead of 12 people in the crew, this year we were 9. Andy, Elias, Jan, and Trevor had all decided not to return. Our one new addition was Eric Larson, the Dane.
Was this like a before and after shot?
Happy birthday.
Thank you very much, Doc.
New lines there, right there on the side of your eye. 30 years old today.
And we are very proud here to be your host in Greenland. And we're proud to be able to see you off this way. And I hope you will have a very, very pleasant journey. And I hope to hear from you.
What is this? How do I feel? I feel ecstatic. 5 years in the making, and this is it. Yeah. This is it. I'm stoked. Couldn't be happier. Awesome time. Ready to move on. Looking forward to going north. And beautiful day for a set.
All right. Send this off to the Coast Guard.
Okay, get way together.
Eric, can you explain what this is here?
This is our new deck tent.
It looks like you could put 10 people in there. Why don't you go in there and lie down just so we can get an idea of it.
You can even stick to your harness.
If this rudder doesn't clunk over.
This year, the rudder system was much stronger, but it still needed a lot of fine-tuning.
Make sure this one's working well. The first winter, we went over to Denmark and Norway and talked with people there, and they were very helpful. And so the solution was we put in a much larger frame. We put in a couple of framing members there. We moved the rudder back 11 inches, probably changed the angle it hung as far as hanging in a little bit.
By the time we went through all these, shenanigans of had 4 different rudders, we're shaving little bits off here and there and figuring out which one was going to work. By the time we were all said and done, we went full circle from this big old hunkin' foil-shaped rudder that was way too big and put too much stress on things.
And we ended up making the first rudder work.
I feel like I have a pretty good handle now on Viking rudders and what it was all about. And their boats were completely balanced and sort of in tune with all the forces throughout the entire boat. And the rudder is one small part of that.
It's voodoo. It's black magic. See that tiller? The boat's basically steering itself. I didn't expect it to do that.
So what's your plan at this point? You're going to continue with the Viking clothing?
Yeah, but the problem is I was saying that publicly. That means I'm going to have to now. See, I haven't said it to this thing. Is that now I have to go ahead and try to wear them every day. I'm a little worried for when we're sailing into the wind and it's raining, but.
Like the coastline coming up here was dramatic, just jagged peaks covered with snow. This year, it was just amazing.
Wow, look at that.
All the changes, the strengthening of the boat just makes me happy, and things seem to be going really well.
John Gardner, good dealing.
Here we are.
Gather meets the cards here, boys.
Morning after the Arctic Circle crossing. Goodwill abound.
I got that meat.
Brotherly love.
And those cards. I can't
and Kapaka.
I chose this boat.
Yes.
The rudder that steers it. And the people that stand behind the tiller.
My toast is actually just 2 guys. Oh,
Lovely Sissamute. So Starsky, how's it feel to be out of Chicago? Paid vacation?
Yeah.
What'd you do with the Barracuda? Did you put it up on blocks?
Well, I think it's like the negativeness seems like it's increasing. It definitely. I mean, I definitely has over the last, especially coming into system. So, and like Terry was saying, I think it just sort of grows on itself.
It only takes. Say we were allowed to use the dinghy.
Hey Homer, cut the shit, would you? It's like it's got to be done. If you don't want to do it, then.
If you don't want to do it, then what, John?
Yeah. What is the next option?
So you never want to be on video?
Well,
then let's have it be a consistent thing, all right?
Film right now.
Fucking video, and then sits there.
Living together so close and for so long, of course there was the occasional flare-up.
That's not a cool way to communicate. Sticking his hand in, saying no. If he doesn't want to be videoed, use your mouth and communicate.
But despite moments like this one, for the most part, the crew got along remarkably well.
You're doing a good job. I didn't mean to disrespect. We're all cool, so maybe we should, if everyone's okay, start the video again. Maybe it's hiding turn.
Oh, it was recording anyway the whole time.
Great.
Good shots of Terry's feet. Gee, Howard, are you eating Viking fries in a modern grocery store in Sissamute, Greenland?
I feel like we're blending right in. Eating local food, shopping like everyone does here.
This year, 4 of us shared cooking duties, while the other 5 took turns helping with prep and cleanup.
Hobnob crisis.
You know where I get hobnobs? At Brookson? They have hobnobs. No?
What?
Well, I don't know. As far as our popularity as cooks go, how would you think we're ranked?
Oh yeah, let's do rank ourselves.
I would say...
Who's number 1? All right, who's number 4? Who's number 4?
Doug. If he just stopped trying to cook beans, his stock would rise dramatically. But he can't cook a soft bean. Eric's been pretty good, but he uses too many cans.
Oh, yeah, he used 8 cans the other day.
Son of a bitch. And, I'd say I probably head up the best of the cooks, but I rely heavily on pasta.
Wait, you're trying to say you cook better than me? You're trying to say you score higher than I do?
We'll have to ask the crew, Hod.
This is the coast of Baffin Island, right here, and you can see that there's very little of the coast that has no ice. Most of it has significant amounts of ice. Yeah, Sissamute to the Hall Peninsula, if that would clear out, that would be actually a great shot, and that's about 375 miles. I'm feeling like, let's get the hell out of town. Yep. Tired of being a circus exhibit.
It's about 2 o'clock in the morning right now, and it may look like it's bright as day out here, and it is. It's still pretty bright, but if you've been watching it change, it's definitely getting darker now than it has in the past, and the Arctic summer is definitely slowly waning.
Southbound 2, Viking ship Snorri, Viking ship Snorri, over.
Viking ship Snorri, good afternoon, Dean. Let me do a very quick sort of overall analysis. There's a low pressure system sitting over north of Queensland, and there's a low pressure system.
Gundalow is a woman's knife. Ditty bag here.
A needle case.
The Universal Man.
My third ditty bag. All sorts of fun stuff to play with, Keep you busy.
Keep going, boys, keep going. With the kind of weather that you would run into on Wednesday.
No, we'll have to wait another 10 years.
I think between now and Sunday, you got a great opportunity to make some distance.
We're going. The way that all came about. There was a forecast from a professional forecaster who also has a very good reputation. What? Is anybody really uncomfortable with this?
No.
No, me. No. Okay. I mean, just know that other, Herb's forecast is out there, and like we said, he's good. Michael Carr is also good, and if it turns out that Herb is the one we should have believed, then it's gonna suck.
All right.
Should we bust the axe?
Yes, he does.
Oh, yeah.
Golly.
Who might lose their arm?
I'm hoping an offering will ensure our luck. And a haircut's been long overdue.
Well, we were drifting and complaining about it. It's about 5 in the morning. We're not just drifting and becalmed anymore. Trying to sail, what we trying to sail a little south of west. We get to Baffin. Wind's blowing about 20 knots. And swells and waves are anywhere from like 6, 8 feet maybe now and then. Pretty wild. I guess we're gonna have to fight our way to Baffin this time.
It was like riding a Bronco last night, but I'm sure as heck glad that we didn't end up doing it again this morning.
I remember that day with those pilot whales. They were there so long that you just got tired of looking at them.
That was that crossing. I mean, it's really the only open water crossing we did, with the exception of Hudson Strait. But this was the real deal, this was, you're gone. out of sight of land, nothing on your horizon for 360 degrees, and you're out there and you're dealing with whatever comes up because you don't have any other choice.
Well, we've been out here about 4 days now. I feel great. Last year I was sort of wondered if we could really meet the test of crossing Davis Strait, and I don't know if we've really passed yet this year, but we keep going. I guess it's the only thing you can do. It gives me a lot of respect for the Vikings, of course, just setting out like they had no idea where they were going.
Oh my dang. We have clear sky, sunshine. We're sailing the course we want to sail. We have a few icebergs scattered around just for our viewing pleasure. Life is good again.
The dreaded, not just Davis, but the dreaded Davis.
Riding out another windless gale.
Another phantom gale.
And as we know, God helps those who help themselves.
8:45, Sunday the 9th, and we've just spotted the very edge of the Cumberland Peninsula on Baffin Island. Woohoo! It's been a long time coming. We've been out here. We've seen a little bit of everything. We've had a gale. We've had flat calm. We were actually rowing last night in the middle of Davis Strait, and now, just a couple hours after the sun has come up, we've seen Baffin Island. It's still going to take us I don't know, a couple, 3-4 days to get there at this pace, but we've seen it now.
I tell you, the one thing that haunts me was the first bear we saw.
That scared the hell out of me. This sucker's like swim fast, run fast, eat fast.
It was pretty funny. We came rowing into this anchorage in this harsh land.
I looked up on the cliff and I see this giant white thing, and it's not unusual to see old fishing buoys or chunks of styrofoam.
John Abbott goes, "Hey, what is that white thing up there?"
But this thing looked huge, and it had this yellow tint. And I looked up and I asked John Gardner, "John, does that look like a bear to you?" And he kind of sniffed. He went.
I was actually looking at the thing when it went, and looked at us.
Sure enough, it's a big polar bear sitting up here.
We were all going to get out, and it was our first Baffin Island, so I'm sure everybody would have gotten out of the boat. And if that bear had been on the other side of that ridge sleeping, I can't imagine what it was going to be like.
You don't have to outrun the bear. You just got to be able to run faster than one other person on the crew.
But this land it's harsh and it's cold, and we thought Greenland was remote and desolate, but this place it's eerie. It's so barren.
All right, Mexican night. Yeah, Viking ship snoring.
Rob, what are you making?
I'm making a bang stick so that if we get visited by a polar bear tonight, we'll probably burn the boat down trying to get this to work. And we'll be another one of those Mary Celeste mysteries. What happened to those 9 Goombas who went off on a Viking ship?
We don't really know how to deal with them. We don't know if we're in danger. We've decided that we're going to do polar bear watches just as a precaution and make sure it doesn't swim out to get more friendly with us. But from everything we've read, it's sort of ambiguous as to how predatory they are.
I'm surprised the polar bears didn't come at dark. They all came during the day, and I was surprised they didn't come at night, because boy, if they'd come at night, even doing bear watch, I'm sure they would have been right on top of us before we knew it.
We are surrounded by polar bears right here. I think we saw 4 all wandering down, ambling to the water, and we're kind of stuck because the current's no longer with us and the wind's against us, and so we're kind of making our final stand here. And this shotgun's ready, and we're all a little nervous.
Okay, not looking good for the home team.
He looks like he just wants to jump.
Yeah, bad. He wants to get out
Don't put
here.
your head down. Bad bear. Bad.
Go home, come on.
This is
so exciting. I've never been eaten before. We did a polar bear watch during the night, and as you can see, we're here to tell the tale this morning. We went out under high winds and sped off. At one point, we had walruses so close to the bow, saw a big 1.5-ton surface, and we thought we were on top of a rock. Doug yelled "rock," much to the surprise of everyone around us, and then it rolled over. We saw its big tusks.
Happy birthday to you.
It's my birthday.
Happy birthday, dear honey. Happy birthday to you.
Thanks, fellas. Actually, I was going to say, we've been rowing for 5 of the last 6 days. We took a day off along the Labrador coast. These guys are doing amazing.
This is the Iron Strand on the northern coast of Labrador.
I was walking around like on the shore here, seeing bear prints and then wolf prints and caribou prints.
Any of these beasts that roam wild out here, it's just such a comforting thought to know that they're here and there's nothing that's impending around them that's going to take away their environment. And I think about how freely we give away the habitat that we have, and this is the Arctic's going to become a very important place in decades to come.
This is beauty, and we did it. We got here, and it just it still overwhelms me when I think about it. Right here in Labrador, our biggest challenge has been just rowing. We have to row every day, anywhere up to 12 miles in a day, which is about a 10-hour day to row that far. It hasn't been a north wind for maybe 2 weeks, and so it's been very trying, with our patience, and all the guys are handling that really well. Just, we have to wait until the right thing happens. It's 7 miles. Right, exactly. 4 to 5 hours of rowing.
Hopefully I'll come down the stairs and Pat and my friend Jay to February. Hey, look! No!
Yeah.
That one, it's gotta be a naked picture.
Well, that's the thing, yeah. I think it's the same. Right. I mean, all the loads are set, turn around the harbor maybe, or you okay.
We go from
There's reasons why it was important to make progress when we're in the northern part of Labrador. One is crew feelings. 2 would be food that we had on board. And the third one would be getting off the water before the real fall storm started to hit. I'm pretty exhausted. We sailed through the night and made about 100 miles down the Labrador coast. It was high time. The crew was getting pretty anxious. And then last night when we were like 3 in the morning, we're going like 4 or 5 knots. One of the guys started talking about his cats at home, and Rob came over and hugged me. So I think that this has turned the corner for us, so that we feel a little bit better about the fact that it's September and we're still in northern Labrador.
Hey, Eric. Just see when we were out gathering this kelp here. I mean, you don't mess with kelp, especially if it's wounded.
I mean, we got this. Harding stood up there in the bow with the harpoon ready. And the kelp just peeked out of the water. You know, their eyes met. You could see it. This tension of the moment, you know. And as this kelp just turns away, tries to escape, Harding jumps over it and stabs the harpoon right into it. It was beautiful.
Fearless, isn't he?
It was some hunt.
You don't think we should put one layer of peat down, maybe?
All right, and the rest of these we'll just lay down, you know, on these rocks.
A local hunter had made us a gift of a caribou leg. To cook it, we wrapped the meat in kelp, to steam it and to prevent burning. Finally, we placed a layer of peat over everything to hold in the heat.
Bad.
After an hour or so, it was done.
There's a bowl. There's a bowl.
Right here. One second.
Meat eaters rejoice.
Oh my God, you guys, this looks so good. It smells good.
All right.
Wow.
I think that looks just great, huh?
Is it good? Hit me.
It is great.
Oh. Doesn't get any better than this, does it, guys?
Oh, boy. Oh, it's trees, damn it, trees.
I'd let you guys fish this school then. They don't like my stuff.
You need to put the ramen in.
Giving the old girl some Sunday go to meeting clothes.
We're downwind in about 15 knots of wind, and we're probably under 200 miles to go now to Alonzo Meadows. The crew has undergone an evolution, just like everything else in the boat, just like the rudder has gone through its evolution. We started out with 12, and this year have come back with 9, and that was an incredible improvement, just in physical space. We've definitely evolved as a crew into a working team. You know, we certainly still have our ups and downs, but it's been easy this year.
When we hit Henley Harbor, which was across the Belle Isle Strait, I knew we'd made it. You know, we'd proven we could get there.
25 miles to Alonzo Meadows from here, which on a good breeze is 4 or 5 hours, and we're all really ready for it. We've been waiting for this day for a long time.
Conditions looked right for our final sail, and across the Strait of Belle Isle, a crowd was gathering to greet us.
It's 175 true.
Yeah.
More like 200. We gotta be able to steer 200 right now.
This course isn't going to cut it. Yeah.
It's off by about 10 degrees.
But when the wind shifted, we had no choice but to follow it back to Henley Harbor for the night.
Oh, I'm disappointed. At some point, you just want to get over there. Also thinking that an awful lot of people there are waiting to see us. Someone may have to leave before we get there.
Okay, come doors. Go ahead, Doug.
Well, we set off sailing downwind at about 15 to 20 knots to go to Alonzo Meadows, the last 25 miles, and then the wind died after, I don't know, probably like 2 or 3 hours. So we've been rowing. And it seems fitting. That's how we started off this whole thing. We was doing a lot of rowing, so we're rowing to the end.
joke if I could have found a way for us to fail again and have to go back a third year, you know. I would do it in a heartbeat.
Today, how long ago was that? 1998, so 5 years ago. It's a long time, and I still, you know, I think about it all the time.
An understatement to say it was once in a lifetime, because I mean, there isn't anything like it again. Probably never will be.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the government of Newfoundland and Labrador, I take great pleasure in welcoming the Viking Snorri to our province.
We had to swim ashore. I mean, there was no other way for us to properly end that trip.
The memories created by that trip are still very much with me. You know, that could easily not come around again in one lifetime. So I'm very fortunate to have done it, but I also miss it. You know, here I am sitting in Rockland in the middle of winter.
You know, when will I ever have a chance to do something like that again?
One of the things I'm dealing with now in my life is that, you know, I had this grand plan to get my sailboat and sail around the world. And this Viking voyage has satisfied that to an extent that I'm having trouble getting fired up to go do something like that again.
It's the fundamental signature of the human spirit, and we see it here.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was the best experience I've ever had.
Okay, that was wonderful. Dean, what a great video, what a great documentary. So let me check the queue here and see what kind of questions we have if you hold on. Is there anything you want to talk about before we get to the questions?
No, I think the questions will probably get most things.
All right, let's see here.
Sorry about the video skipping. This was done long before there was high def, so.
I didn't notice it on my end. Was it skipping around a little bit?
Was on mine, yeah.
Wow. Okay, I don't have access to the comments when this is going on because I'm sharing my screen. So it's, wow. All right. So first question comes from Fred and Adele Pulitzer. So let me unmute them and they can ask the question to you. Hold on a second. Go ahead, Fred and Adele.
No, I just wanted to ask, what was the coin that was put under the mast when you were raising it?
Yeah, I think it was some Danish coin. It's an old custom that I wasn't that familiar with for good luck to put a coin under the mast when you step it. So, I found one in my boat when I took this mast out.
Well, it was quite an adventure you had for two different summers.
It was. Actually, I got 2 more summers doing the same thing. So not quite the same thing, but in Viking boats. So it was quite a string.
Yeah, quite a boat that you built, or that was built.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you know the history of those? In the late 60s, the Danes discovered 5 Viking boats that had been sunk in a harbor over there. And so they built a cofferdam around these things and dug them up and preserved them, and eventually built the Viking Ship Museum in Roskilde. And this boat is built after what they call Skudelev 1. And it's a, all the boats they dug up were different. So it was an interesting collection of them. And this one is called a Knarr, K-N-A-R-R. And it's basically an offshore cargo boat. So it's not, it probably doesn't, if you're not familiar with Viking boats, looking at it probably doesn't show it, but it's not, it's much heavier and bulkier and wider than the other boats. This is what they carried their cargoes in this. It wasn't the warships they sailed up the rivers and raided all the churches and stuff with.
Well, you had quite a sail area. Do you know how, you remember how much that was?
1,000 square feet.
Okay, that turns out to be the only question so far in the chat box. So I just sent a message to everyone to send their questions in. But why don't you tell us what happened to the boat after you guys made it to La Anse Meadows?
Oh, okay. So our trip ended in '78, that trip, and we gave the boat to, let me back up a second. So L'Anse Meadows is the only confirmed Viking settlement in North America. And it's a UNESCO site, whatever they call that. And there's all, and so driving up the coast of Newfoundland for 200 miles, it's all Viking motels and gift shops and Nordic this and Nordic that. It's a huge tourist attraction. And so we gave the boat to their sort of tourist organization up there. And in 2000, they built a new replica Viking village up there. And one of the buildings they made was a sod boathouse to store this boat in. So we resurrected part of the crew, went back up there and spent a month sailing the boat around the northern peninsula, they call it, the NP of Newfoundland. Going into all these little harbors and promoting this new Viking village. And then at the end of the month, we sailed into the bay where this new village was, along with 13 or 12 other Viking ships, including the Islindinger, which was the ship that was on the photo that Rich used to promote this session. And it was a lot of fun. And somehow, I told Rich, I think they commandeered every school bus in Newfoundland because there's no place to park or stay up there. And they bussed in, I don't know, 20,000 people one day, had this big ceremony and bussed them out at the end of the day. It was pretty amazing.
All right,
it's now on display in that museum up there in the boathouse.
We did have a question or something, a statement maybe from Erin Trainer's 10-year-old. Hold on a second. Let me unmute Erin and see if we can get her to have that question or that statement made. Are you there, Erin?
We are, yep. I'm here with my son named Dean.
Oh. Go ahead.
So, did you know that you can follow orcas and humpback whales to shore?
I didn't. We didn't see any orcas up there. We saw a couple of humpbacks one day. We saw a lot of minke whales. And of course, those pilot whales that were that one day. But we didn't have any of them leading us to shore.
Thank you.
Question from Kent Allen. So let me unmute Kent and let him ask you your question here. Hold on a second. Wow, I got a lot of people. Kent, are you there? Go ahead.
Hello. Hello, Dean.
Hi.
I'm just wondering if the Vikings ever decided to put their rudder on the center line.
As far as I know, they never did. In fact, one of the stories that I've never confirmed is that the terms port and starboard come from that the steer board was put on the starboard side, the right side of the boat. And then because it was there, they would tie up on the other side, which was the port side. How true that is, I have no idea. But no, they were always done that way. And one of the interesting sort of archaeological facts is they found a fair number of Viking boats and they found rudders, but they've never found a boat with the rudder with it together. So it was sort of a guess about what this rudder was supposed to be, how big and so forth.
Well, it looks like from your from the video, it looks like the rudder really wanted to leave the boat.
Yeah, the difficulty was originally was on a starboard tack. The boat heels a little bit, not much, but it lifts that rudder out a little bit. And then you can see how much leeway it makes. So the rudder's then in all this spoiled water. And so when they were hard on the wind on a starboard tack, originally they couldn't get enough purchase to bring the boat around through the wind. Finally, we got a rudder that did that. And we didn't have any more problems with that.
Have they ever found an old Viking ship with lee boards?
Not that I know of. No, I don't think, as far as I know, they never used those. And they didn't have, I mean, they did have iron, so it's possible they could have made the hardware to hang one off the stern, but as far as I know, they never did that. They were all pretty much the way this one was done. Part of our also original problem was I was there the day that they put the first rudder on. And it was sort of the last thing they did after they pulled the boat out of the shed. And I was actually working with the guy that put it on, and we were sort of back there, you know, where does this go? Oh, put it here, you know, and then we just drilled a hole through the side of the boat. And so there wasn't much structural integrity around that line, that withy that held the rudder on. When we redid it, you saw that big piece of wood that Rob was putting in there for the structure. We drilled the hole for the withy through that thing, so it gave it much more support, and it couldn't play on the boat and as much. So we didn't have any more problems with that.
You mentioned the leeway of the boat before the video started, and there was that one scene that you saw the boat from the from bow on, and it looked like it was sliding right across the screen. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, right. Yep. The boat would point maybe 55 degrees off the wind, but we would make about 80 degrees tracking across the ground. So it was almost as fast to row as it was to try to sail to windward in that boat. And I sort of have this belief that the Vikings didn't bother to do that. I mean, they'd wait till it was favorable and go. I mean, going to windward is sort of a modern sailboat kind of thing, you know. When you finally get fore and aft sails, the other kind don't work so well that way. One of the other things you could see when we were pointing high into the wind, they had a pole up there that held the forward tack of the sail down, tried to bring it as far forward as possible. And that pole was called a betias, B-E-I-T-I-A-S-S in Norwegian. And of course, along the bottom, on the inside of the boat, there's a big log with 3 holes built in it to put that pole in. So we could adjust it at different levels.
All right, got a question from Joy Madden. So let me unmute Joy, and we can go ahead and get her to ask the question. Joy, you there?
Yeah.
Go ahead and ask the question.
I wonder how the trip was documented. Was there a helicopter, or was there another boat following you? And I also would like to know how you cooked and what you cooked, because once you got to Labrador, Newfoundland, you looked pretty healthy.
Well, I'll do it in reverse order. We had great cooks. we ate a lot. Unfortunately, we ate a lot of beans, and
Okay.
wearing those Mustang suits was a bit of a problem. So anyway, but no, we ate really well. You could hear them in the grocery store in Greenland debating about who. It was one of Harding's characteristics. Everything was competitive with him. So we ate, especially that second year where they rotated it between the four guys. No, we ate very well, and were never out of food or low on food or anything. We had plenty of it. Let's see, you were asking me. Oh, there was never a helicopter. When we were in Greenland, and I believe again when we got near the coast of Newfoundland, they chartered small planes to fly around to get those overhead shots, which I'm glad they did it, because those pictures, none of us could have taken those pictures sailing among those icebergs, which was sort of an amazing experience. In hindsight, it probably wasn't the smartest thing to do. Those icebergs, two things happen. One is they sometimes split in half or in big chunks, and when they roll over, they create almost tidal waves, which they're bad enough that there was a village not that long ago, I think in the last 30 or 40 years, in the coast of Greenland that was wiped out by that.
Oh, really?
Heavily damaged and a lot of people killed. The other problem is that a lot of the chunks break off underwater, and of course the ice floats, so those things come to the surface, and if you're over the spot where those things are coming to the surface, it would have sunk our boat for sure if we'd hit it. So it's not, I mean, it's tempting. You look at those things and, hey, let's go over and tie up to it and climb around on it, but not a good idea. And you were asking, I think, about the documentation. Was that the question?
Well, yeah, I was talking about the photographs.
Yeah, so when we were near shore, we had professional photographers that came along with us or aboard us, or were in the plane or in a chase boat.
Okay.
But once we left the mainland, it was all up to ourselves. So we had a video camera that you saw those guys use, and we also had one mounted in the stern that you could just go back and turn on, and it would capture whatever was going on, or you could talk to it or whatever. But
Thank you.
all. And then in addition to that, maybe some of you saw, looking at the stern, there was a small Inmarsat antenna back there. And Land's End had given us a computer and a digital camera. And more or less every day we would write rotate among the crew. We would write up a blog of the day, download some pictures, and email it back to and they put that, or to Land's End, and they put that up on their website. And they got some good reviews from the website at one point.
Are you talking about Land's End, the clothing store? The clothing?
Yes, right. Yeah,
Yay.
there's a whole other story there too.
Okay, you were well outfitted.
Yeah, so one of the things that was amazing is you're on this boat, it's 55 feet long and 16 feet wide with these people. Your turn would come around to write the blog, and you'd look back at what people wrote the day or two before, and you'd go, I was on this boat. That wasn't how it looked to me that day. So it makes you suspicious about eyewitness reports. And this was a day after. This wasn't like a 50-year reunion.
All right, we've got time for one more question. This one's coming from Rich Carlson here. Hold on. Let me unmute Rich. Go ahead, Rich.
No, it was me. It was Hillary, but my question was answered, really. It was about the rudder redesign, so why don't you let someone else ask me?
All right, let me see if there's another question here. Hold on. Oh, from Ken Allen. I'm not going to unmute you, Kent, but did you eat raw fish?
We never caught any fish, except that, well, no, we didn't eat raw fish. We ate those trout that they caught that one time, and they were very delicious. We didn't eat that other fish that Hotting held up. In terms of raw food, that place where the Inuit women were singing the song to us, the camera wasn't on it long, but there was a table laid out there of food. We referred to that as our endangered species meal. There was whale meat, beluga skin, seals, muskox food, everything that would be illegal or immoral here to eat. We had a little taste of. And I must confess, in the Sissamute fish market, there was a guy in there, he had a fresh seal, and he was selling stuff off of it. And I saw one of the local women go up and ask him for a taste of the liver. And I happen to like liver, but she ate it raw. And I thought, wow. I tasted it, it was fantastic. I had no way to cook it, so I didn't buy any. But the meat market's a little tough to look at, the skin seals, I have to admit.
All right. Well, we're about out of time. Dean, thank you so much for the documentary and hanging around to answer the questions that folks had. We really enjoyed it.